The day before my engagement, Leo's first love found me outside the venue. She was wearing a bold red dress, a stark contrast to the frail and delicate image she usually projected. A confident smile played on her lips as she spoke. "If I don't want this engagement to happen, it won't. You don't believe me, Miss Sterling. Just you wait and see." She was right. The following day, just moments before the ceremony was set to begin, a call came for Leo. It was news that she was having another one of her depressive episodes. He completely unraveled. While guests were mingling outside, he was in the private dressing room, tearing at the tie that matched his black suit. He grabbed his car keys and started for the door, pausing only long enough to throw a few words over his shoulder. "Clara, I'm sorry. I have to go see her. I'll explain everything to your grandfather when I get back." I just sat there, my makeup only half finished, feeling a profound coldness settle in my heart. I stood up and moved to block the doorway, my own voice trembling when I spoke. "Leo, if you walk out that door today, we are finished." My eyes were burning with unshed tears. "Do you even remember what day this is? It's our engagement." He frowned, his face a mask of irritation. "Clara, enough. What difference does it make which day we set? I already agreed to marry you. What more do you want? Don't forget you were the one who begged me for this engagement." His words hit me like a physical blow. I had begged him. So that's how he saw it all. This union, the strategic alliance between our powerful families, was reduced to nothing more than my own desperation in his eyes. He didn't want to argue anymore. His only thought was of getting to her. He pushed past me without a second of hesitation, his assistant trailing behind him. I stumbled backward, nearly losing my balance, but the makeup artist and my stylist caught me just in time. They exchanged a worried glance, unsure of what to say. "She's depressed. She needs him," I murmured, as if trying to convince myself one last time. "I can handle it." The stylist hesitated before gently asking, "Miss Sterling, would you like to change out of your dress?" My eyes drifted to the corner where the gown hung. It had been custom-made a year ago, a silent testament to a future that had just evaporated. Without hesitating, I shook my head. "No," I said, my voice firming. "The ceremony will proceed as planned." The guests waited for what felt like an eternity. Whispers started to ripple through the crowd. Did Leo really leave her again? Clara is so shameless, still clinging to a man who doesn't love her. Sophie and Leo are the real true love. Clara just has the advantage of a wealthy grandfather. Without the Sterling family, Leo wouldn't even give her the time of day. I sneered inwardly when I overheard that. Was it true love when, during the Donovan family's financial crisis, Sophie was the first one to sever all ties? Was it true love now that she suddenly reappeared after my family had invested everything to save the Donovans from ruin? Leo, you can't have it both ways and still pretend to be the noble one. I picked up the microphone and, lifting the hem of my elegant dress, I walked onto the stage. I made no attempt to soften the blow. I addressed the room filled with our families and friends. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend what was supposed to be my engagement to Leo Donovan. Our two families have been intertwined for generations, and Leo and I grew up alongside each other. We were supposed to walk into marriage with your blessings today. Unfortunately, Leo cannot forget Miss Sophie. He has chosen to go to her side, even on a day as important as this. So, I have chosen to let him go. I now declare that the engagement between myself and Leo is officially canceled. The room exploded into a flurry of shocked murmurs. Everyone was trying to process what I had just announced. Did he really run off to find his ex-girlfriend on their engagement day? He must be insane. I heard his grandfather never liked Clara anyway. He only tolerated her for the sake of the family alliance. Still, to just run off like that? Is that how a man is supposed to behave? My grandfather was livid. He stood up, pointing a trembling finger at Leo's grandfather. "This is the grandson you raised? Do you think my granddaughter has no one else in this world to protect her? Don't you forget, it was you who came to my home, begging for Clara to join your family." Mr. Donovan, sitting at the head table, was utterly humiliated. His face went pale, and he slammed his hand on the table, shouting at his son, "You ungrateful fool! Call him and get him back here immediately, or I will deal with him myself." Leo's parents quickly stood, trying to de escalate the situation, apologizing profusely and promising they would find Leo and bring him back. Amid all the chaos, one man sat calmly, sipping his red wine and watching the drama unfold with a slight smirk. His name was Julian. He had witnessed every moment of humiliation I had endured because of Leo, and here he was again, watching my downfall. But this time, I refused to lose. Our eyes met across the crowded room. I spoke directly to him, my voice clear and steady. This engagement might be canceled, but the venue is booked and the preparations are all made. It would be a shame to let it all go to waste. Julian, I need a fiancé. Do you dare to step up? A collective gasp went through the crowd as every eye in the room swiveled to Julian, the charming and rebellious second son of the Donovan family. He lived a carefree life of luxury, horses, and fast cars. Orphaned at a young age, he answered to no one and had never shown any interest in the Donovan family business. Leo might have taken pride in being the future heir, but I was about to prove to him that a title could be given to anyone. Julian raised his glass slightly, a slow smile curving his lips. Under the dazzling lights of the chandeliers, he stood. "Miss Sterling," he said, his voice carrying easily through the now silent room. "It would be an honor." The usual cynicism in his expression was gone, replaced by a composed look as he walked toward the stage. The crowd parted for him. When he reached me, he extended a hand. The host, recovering from his shock, handed him the small velvet box containing the engagement ring. Julian opened it, and with surprisingly elegant fingers, he gently slid the diamond ring onto my middle finger. The whole process felt impossibly smooth, almost as if it were guided by some unseen force. As he stood close to me, tall and striking in his suit, I was momentarily at a loss for words. Then, without any warning, his arms wrapped around me. One hand gently cradled the back of my neck as he leaned in and kissed me. His kiss was tender, but carried a firm resolve that was completely unlike the casual, playful attitude he usually projected. It left me breathless, my heart pounding from the intensity. Just then, a wave of cheers erupted around us, followed by the popping of champagne corks and streamers flying through the air. He leaned in, his lips close to my ear. "Clara, you should have chosen me a long time ago," he murmured, his voice low and teasing. "But it's not too late now." I caught a glint of mischievous joy in his eyes. Meanwhile, Leo's parents were protesting loudly. They were furious. After Leo's older sister passed away, the old man had brought Julian, his nephew, back into the family fold. Ever since, they had done everything they could to block his every move. Now, to their horror, Julian was trying to steal his own cousin's fiancée. Old Master Donovan could no longer contain his rage. "Aren't you ashamed? After what Leo has done to her family, we are the ones who owe Clara. If she chooses anyone in this family, it is our honor." My grandfather scoffed at that and had them escorted out without so much as a bite to eat. Those within the Donovan clan who had once backed Leo saw the tide turning. At the banquet that followed, they quietly began to switch their allegiance, warming up to Julian. Choosing Julian wasn't a complete whim. On the day we had spoken about the business, I had laid out all my cards. I told him that if he fully cooperated with me to complete the joint projects between our families, I would help him gain the full support of the Sterling family. My family's business was in pharmaceuticals, but I had always wanted to branch out into something new, something fresh. I had a vision to create a health-focused beverage tailored to a younger demographic. And that was how our partnership with the Donovan family had begun. But the old guard at Sterling Group never believed in me. They were just waiting for me to fail. If I could successfully pull off this collaboration, I could silence those conservative voices who always looked down on me as just a young girl. Julian's dark eyes had studied my face carefully. I had no idea what he was thinking. I frowned at him, but he suddenly smiled, leaned in, and said softly, "Clara, aren't we supposed to be planning a honeymoon now?" "We're not even married yet," I snapped. "Did you hear a word I just said?" He gave a small shake of his head. He had never been involved in the family's business affairs, so it would take time for him to get up to speed. I sighed, deciding to help him. I was about to launch into a lecture when his strong arms pulled me close. I instinctively pressed against his chest as his nose lightly brushed against mine, his deep eyes locking with mine and drawing me in. Then he kissed me again. "Clara, teach me," he whispered. "I'll learn." "No," I said, pushing him away. I was only planning on using him to get revenge on Leo, not to turn this into something real. But before I could finish the thought, his lips were on mine again, stealing my breath and leaving me dizzy. Suddenly, he scooped me up into his arms and carried me toward the bedroom. I wrapped my arms around his neck, clinging to him so I wouldn't fall. He laid me gently on the bed and knelt beside me, his breath warm on my skin, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Clara," he said, "the most ruthless way to get revenge on a man is to forget him completely." I looked into his eyes, considering his words. Maybe he was right. We were adults. There was no need to play innocent. I closed my eyes, preparing for him to continue, but he stopped. Instead, he kissed my forehead gently. "But I'll wait," he said softly, "until you're truly ready." He pulled the blanket over me, tucking me in like a child. "You must be exhausted. Rest well." I opened one eye and gave him a playful kick under the covers. He chuckled quietly, then grabbed another quilt and lay down beside me without another word. 3 days passed before Leo finally remembered he had a fiancé. He called and asked when I would be returning to our home. Our home. That was laughable. I was the one who bought the house we were supposed to live in after the wedding. I furnished every single inch of it. He hadn't contributed a single dollar, yet he had the audacity to ask me that. His voice sounded hollow and resentful. "You took everything from the house. Are you not planning on coming back? You even took the bed. Do you expect me to sleep on the floor?" He was mistaken. I didn't take the bed. I sold everything. In fact, I sold the entire house. The real estate agent had barely managed to change the locks before it was gone. Wearing my sun hat on a bright terrace, I took a slow sip of my drink and replied, "Go find your first love. Maybe the two of you can squeeze into the tiny bed in her rented apartment. And if she ends up in the hospital again," I added casually, "maybe this time you'll actually save her. If not, the doctors might laugh themselves silly seeing her perfectly healthy already. All these years and she's still pulling the same pathetic stunts. No improvement at all, and yet that fool Leo keeps falling for it every single time." Mentioning his first love always set Leo off. Sure enough, his voice rose over the phone. "Why are you dragging her into this? As for you and my cousin, I'm treating that as nothing more than a passing fling. I'm busy. I don't have time to come and get you. If I'm giving you a way out, you should take it. Don't come crying to me later when you've run out of options." How ridiculous. Who gave him the right to act like he was doing me a favor? A way out for me? In his dreams. Especially not here, in a foreign land where I had already started to find my own path. Julian snatched the phone from my hand and, in his usual lazy tone, replied, "Brother, she doesn't need a way out. You go enjoy your first love. I'll take good care of Clara." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then a string of curses erupted. Julian calmly ended the call wearing his usual relaxed smile. He shrugged and said lightly, "Your ex is really stingy. If it were me, I'd only care about whether Clara's happy." I rolled my eyes and told him to drop the act. His smile faded, and his gaze locked onto mine. Then, without warning, he pinched my chin, lowered his head, and kissed me. He didn't let go until my legs felt weak. "All right," he said with a soft chuckle. "Don't think about that man when you're with me. I get jealous." He reached out, pulled me into his arms, and said, "Come on, let's go flying." Before I could protest, he was walking me toward a helicopter. We soared up to 3,000 meters, the sky a vast blue expanse above us, the sea and mountains sprawling below. In that moment, the world felt wide and boundless. All my worries, all the emotional entanglements, simply vanished in the wind. My heart, for the first time in a long time, was completely at peace. Maybe this was how I should have been living all along, free, unburdened, and no longer clinging to a love that had worn me down for years. I had lived in chains, physically and emotionally drained, feeling like a shadow of my former self. Julian, ever the charming and carefree young master of the Donovan family, knew exactly how to make life feel like an adventure. We spent half a month abroad, trying something new every single day: gliding, surfing, skydiving. I realized then that my world could be so much more than just work and that messy love triangle with Leo. As I plummeted through the sky, the wind roaring past my ears and my heart pounding wildly, I felt something awaken in me, a spark of life. After being cooped up for so long, I was finally free. Love, heartbreak, drama, it all seemed so small from up here. Let the messy business of chasing after men go to hell. I stretched out my arms, welcoming the vast sky, embracing the world as if for the first time. When my feet touched solid ground again, it felt as if a new soul had quietly taken root inside me. Julian helped me remove my goggles and gently fixed my hair, which was a mess from the wind. He clicked his tongue. "You didn't even cry," he teased. I laughed and shot back. "Do all the other girls you bring up here cry?" He let out a dramatic sigh. "You really think so poorly of me." Then his voice softened. "You're the first, and the only girl who ever cried on my shoulder until my shirt was soaked." I froze for a moment as a memory flashed back. A few years ago, I had caught Leo kissing Sophie, who had just returned to the country. They were tucked away in a quiet corridor, completely lost in each other. I turned to leave and bumped right into Julian. He glanced at the kissing couple, then looked back at me with a faint sneer. Tears streamed down my face before I could stop them. Julian looked confused and awkward, but he opened his arms and let me cry. Back then, he had asked me, "What's so good about Leo anyway?" I had no answer. How do you explain why you fall for someone? Maybe it was the older boy who had once protected me from bullies. Or maybe it was the confident, glowing young man who happened to light up my heart at just the right time. Whatever it was, my joy and my sorrow had been tied to Leo for far too long. But he was no longer that boy, and I was no longer that girl. Coming back to the present, I gave Julian a playful punch. He laughed and pretended to wince in pain, then dropped the act and looked at me seriously. He reached out a hand. "Adventure time is over, Miss Sterling. From today, it's time to begin your new life." I looked at him, with the golden sunlight streaming down from behind, and I felt that new life stretching out toward me. I took a deep breath and smiled. Okay. I had heard that Leo had been searching for me everywhere, even showing up at my family's house several times, only to be driven away by my grandfather. My grandfather had always disapproved of my obsession with Leo. Now it seemed everything had worked out just as he'd wanted. Old Master Donovan had apparently beaten Leo badly, and Leo had even knelt at home for 3 days, begging for another chance to win me back. But this time, I was done. No matter how much he begged or cried, I would not look back. On the way home, Julian and I were chatting and laughing when a shadow suddenly darted out in front of our car. It was Leo. He saw me hugging Julian goodbye, and his face twisted with rage. Without a word, he strode over and punched Julian. His eyes were bloodshot. "Julian, have you no shame?" he roared. "You can be with anyone you want, but not her. She's your cousin's fiancé. Are you trying to be the other man?" I instinctively stepped in front of Julian and asked if he was all right. Julian straightened up slowly, wiped a trickle of blood from the corner of his mouth with his thumb, and gently brushed my hair back. "Stay here, just watch," he said. Then he looked down at the blood on his hand and, without hesitation, punched back, hard and fast. Leo staggered and fell to the ground. Julian grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. He slowly raised his eyes, those mischievous eyes of his gleaming as he curled his lips into a dangerous smile. "Why are you shouting at me, brother? If Clara didn't like me, do you think I would even have a chance to be the other man? If you really think I'm the third wheel, then hand her over. That way I won't be the other man anymore. Being the other man only proves how irresistible I am. But now that Clara has chosen me, guess what? You're the one on the outside now." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Somehow Julian had managed to outmaneuver even Sophie when it came to scheming. I was so embarrassed, I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. This time, Leo could finally see through his cousin's act. His pupils dilated in shock. He knew Julian, but not this side of him. He had never imagined his cousin could be so shameless. Rage surged through him, and with a shout, he flipped Julian over, straddled him, and raised his fists, ready to teach him a lesson. I reacted instinctively. Without thinking, I swung my handbag and struck Leo hard across the head, knocking him to the side. He stumbled, clutching his head, and took a moment to get up. When he finally did, he looked at me in utter disbelief, as if the blow had come from a complete stranger. "Clara," he said hoarsely, "you hit me." "For him?" Julian, who had tumbled into the flower bushes nearby, looked up at me pitifully like a wounded child. He rubbed his temples and murmured, "Clara, your ex is so rough. I have a terrible headache. Only a kiss from my fiancé can make it better." Leo's veins bulged with fury at the sound of Julian's manipulative voice. He stormed forward, grabbed my arm, and tried to drag me away from Julian. "Clara, do you actually dare to help him?" I ignored Leo completely and bent down to help Julian to his feet. Julian leaned into me, pretending to be injured, and shot a smug look over my shoulder at Leo. "Brother, you're so twisted. You even want to control who your ex-fiancé helps. Luckily, she didn't choose you. You would have driven her crazy with your jealousy." Leo clenched his fists, shaking with anger. He pointed at Julian and shouted, "He's faking it. You really believe this nonsense, Clara? Are you so desperate for love that anyone will do?" Before he could finish, I raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face. I had tolerated him long enough. My voice was as cold as ice. "Not just anyone will do," I said, staring him down. "And you, Leo, are definitely not the one. Do you really think I can't live without you?" I stepped closer. "Let me be perfectly clear. I, Clara Sterling, am with your cousin now. You can leave." Leo stood frozen, stunned. He still refused to believe it, convinced Julian had somehow seduced me. He kept insisting I open my eyes and see the truth. I had no patience for his delusions anymore. I called the security guards and told them to escort the stray dogs out. Julian gently took my hand and flashed his cousin a triumphant smile. "Brother, it's freezing out here. My fiancé and I are heading inside now. You should go home too. If you catch a cold, there will be no one around to feel sorry for you." Leo was held back at the gate, and watching us leave together finally made him lose control. He began yelling and cursing wildly. In his rage, he kicked at my front door, only to miss and hit the solid wall instead. He clutched his foot and collapsed to the ground, groaning in pain. Not long after, I made the decision to replace Leo as the liaison for the Donovan Group project. I appointed Julian in his place. Old Master Donovan saw that I was determined to cut all ties with Leo, and though he was reluctant, he had no choice but to agree. After all, my family had invested heavily to rescue the Donovan Group during its most difficult time. He had to respect my decision. With Julian stepping in, the project finally began to run smoothly. When Leo had been in charge, he constantly shot down my ideas before even giving them a chance, and when he did take action, the results were far from acceptable. His team treated me with little respect, and we had endless arguments. Julian didn't rely on the original team. He quickly assembled a new group of experienced, dependable, and highly efficient people. They jumped into the work right away, and I was impressed. Julian's insight and decision-making abilities were far beyond what I had expected. He could spot potential issues at a glance. I realized I had underestimated him for far too long, treating him as just a playboy with no real ability. He caught me looking at him and raised his eyebrows with a teasing smile. "I told you," he said. "I would never let you regret it." I crossed my arms and smirked, already looking forward to what would come next. After we confirmed our upcoming plans, we heard a commotion outside. Leo had forced his way past the security guard and barged into the conference room. In a fit of rage, he threw a folder at me, the documents nearly hitting my face. Julian stepped in just in time to block it. Leo shouted furiously, "Clara, are you out of your mind? I am the person in charge of this project. When will you learn to separate your personal feelings from your work?" I ignored him completely. Instead, I took Julian's hand and noticed a scrape. I called for an assistant to bring a first aid kit, then turned calmly to Leo, who looked ready to explode. "You are no longer in charge. I said plainly. Seeing the confusion on some faces, I spelled it out. From the very beginning, this project has been led by the Sterling family, not the Donovan family, and certainly not you. If there's nothing else, please leave and close the door behind you. Leo stood there silently for a moment. He knew I had the final say, but he couldn't accept the blow to his pride. He frowned and tried to shift the blame. I just went to see Sophie. Was that really worth all this? She's not doing well. I promised her mother I would help look after her. Why do you always have to think the worst? You already have money, love, a family, and me. Do you really have to take away the one little kindness I offer her? His words made my stomach turn. I sneered. If I walked in on the two of you lying in bed together, would you still claim you were just having a conversation under the blankets? I took a step closer, lowering my voice. And let me remind you, if it weren't for you, Sophie would never have even known who I am. Whether she lives or dies now has absolutely nothing to do with me. Leo, who do you think you are? I said, my voice calm but cutting. You're not even worth the effort it takes to argue with. If you can't give me the love I deserve, then please, stay out of my life. Leo stood there, stunned. In the past, I might have rushed to defend myself, to prove I wasn't jealous of Sophie, but not anymore. My indifference caught him completely off guard, and he had no idea how to respond. Just then, Julian leaned his head on my shoulder, pretending to feel faint. A few days ago, my cousin hit me, he said softly. I still feel a little unwell. I was only trying to take care of my fiancé. I don't know why my own cousin took it the wrong way. His words were like fuel to a fire. Leo's face darkened with rage. He couldn't lay a hand on me, but he could lash out at Julian. As he stepped forward, ready to strike, the security guards I had quietly called in advance blocked his path. With a calm wave of my hand, I reminded them, from now on, no unauthorized personnel are allowed inside without my approval. The guards moved quickly, pushing Leo back and escorting him out. For the first time in his life, the proud young master of the Donovan family was thrown out in front of a room full of people. His face burned with humiliation and fury. Clara! He shouted over his shoulder. Remember this. No matter what happens, the heir of the Donovan family will never be an outsider like him. I offered you the title of Mrs. Donovan, but you threw it away. Don't you dare regret this. I didn't even flinch. I closed the door behind him and turned to the others in the room. Let's continue with the meeting, I said. Who regrets what? We'll see in time. After that day, Leo deliberately tried to sabotage the joint project, but Julian handled everything with quiet efficiency. Surprisingly, the once arrogant members of the Donovan family now showed Julian a deep level of respect. The more I saw, the more I began to wonder. Was he pretending to be harmless all along to hide his true capabilities? There were no longer any project delays just to accommodate his first love, or any attempts to shift blame onto others. With Leo gone, the project moved forward swiftly. After months of hard work, our team finally launched the herbal health tea line. Our marketing campaign was a massive hit. We targeted young consumers, highlighting the tea's health benefits and leveraging online platforms to generate buzz. It went viral. Monthly revenue quickly exceeded $1 billion, and our brand became a national sensation. At the celebration banquet, both my grandfather and old Master Donovan were in attendance. They praised us for our courage and vision, saying it was time to let the younger generation take the lead. Leo, however, did not show up. He claimed to be unwell, but I heard that he was so furious he had smashed up his office. He had never imagined that the project he once dismissed would turn into such a massive success. The executives at the Sterling Group no longer dared to look down on me simply because I was a woman. Their attitudes changed, and genuine respect replaced their earlier doubts. When Julian raised his glass to toast me, I returned the gesture with a smile. I always keep my word, I said. When I said I would help you take over the Donovan family, I meant it. He smiled back. And I always believe beautiful ladies. Leo tried multiple times to sabotage our work again, but his own career began to crumble. He spent more time obsessing over Sophie and rushing to fix the chaos she caused than focusing on his own responsibilities. As a result, several serious issues were left unattended, nearly leading to disaster. Old Master Donovan said nothing, so Leo assumed he still had the upper hand. After all, he was the legitimate heir. He believed that no matter what Julian did, he would always be the true successor. Watching his pitiful attempts from the sidelines, I couldn't help but scoff. I was genuinely thankful that I had seen through him early on. If I had stayed with someone so foolish and arrogant, I would have been dragged down into his mess. After everything I had been through, I finally understood something important. More than love, what I needed was a partner. Someone who shared my values, my goals, and who would fight by my side. I looked toward Julian, who was chatting with business leaders at the gala. Maybe, just maybe, going with the flow wouldn't be so bad after all. Then came the grand occasion, Mr. Donovan's 80th birthday. The banquet was held on an enormous scale. 100 tables filled the venue, and luxury cars lined the entrance. People from all walks of life attended, dressed in their finest attire, offering lavish gifts and congratulations. The whispers had already begun. Despite his age, Mr. Donovan had not officially handed over control of the company. Rumors suggested that tonight he would finally name his successor. Last time, I had appeared by Leo's side. Tonight, I came with Julian. It was bound to stir up attention. Everyone was waiting to see what would unfold, especially after the engagement twist and the change of groom had rocked the city's social circles. Leo arrived late, with Sophie clinging to his arm. She was dressed in an eye-catching red gown, her hair tied elegantly high. She looked as if the entire party was being held in her honor. Her eyes met mine with a look of smug triumph. She was clearly waiting for the old man to make an announcement that would prove her victory and humiliate me in front of everyone. The crowd watched closely. The stage was set. It was only a matter of time before the final act began. Sophie couldn't help herself. With a smug smile, she glanced at Julian standing beside me and said, "Miss Sterling, it seems you were never that fond of Leo, huh? Changing your heart so quickly." Before I could respond, Julian beat me to it. He casually swirled the red wine in his glass, giving her a bored glance. That same arrogant, indifferent attitude of his hadn't changed one bit, and neither had his sharp tongue. "Well, well, Miss Sophie. Still alive? Weren't you on a critical condition notice just a while ago? Seems like someone got scammed by a terrible doctor. Better avoid that hospital next time," he said coolly. "And didn't my cousin give you money? Is that a knockoff dress you're wearing? You really chose the wrong person to provoke." Sophie turned bright red, her neck tense with anger. She wanted to fight back but didn't dare. Everything he said was true. She lowered her voice and tried to act wronged, turning to Leo. "Leo, I didn't do anything. You know me." Over the years, Sophie had made quite a bit of money by staying close to Leo, yet she always refused to buy anything authentic. I never understood it. In the past, she even wore the exact same dress as me, to banquets just to compete for attention, and every time Leo would side with her, criticizing my taste and telling me to change into something else. This time was no different. Leo grabbed her wrist protectively and glared at the people around us. "Say what you want about me, but don't insult Sophie. She deserves respect. You all owe her an apology." Julian and I shared an amused glance. I parted my lips and said softly, "The dead deserve nothing, and neither do you." Leo's face darkened, embarrassed and furious. He grabbed my arm and hissed, "Clara, if you don't apologize today once I become chairman, I'll end every single deal between the Donovan family and the Sterling family." Before he could finish, I turned and kicked him hard in the knee, the one he had injured years ago in a polo match. He dropped to the ground with a thud, half kneeling behind me. Sophie screamed and shielded her stomach in a panic. The crowd gasped, some covering their mouths and whispering, "So this is the Clara who was supposed to grovel for Leo's love. If no one were here, she might have beaten him to death." Another voice added, "I always said, how could a real lady ever fancy a man like him?" I stepped back, looking down at Leo and Sophie, and smiled. "I'm looking forward to it." Then I took Julian's arm and walked away without another word. As we left, Julian leaned close and whispered with a laugh, "Cool move." I raised my glass and tapped his lightly. "Don't cross me again," I warned. "Next time it won't end with just a kick." At Old Master Donovan's birthday banquet, Leo dared not stir up any more trouble. He glanced around at the distinguished guests and swallowed his pride. On stage, a performer was singing when Sophie suddenly appeared, singing a birthday song for the old man. Rumors had been spreading that she was pregnant, and the two of them planned to use this moment to gain his approval. They hoped that the prospect of a great-grandchild would make him overjoyed enough to welcome Sophie into the family and officially name Leo as his successor. But Master Donovan only gave her one look and frowned. "Is there no stage outside?" he asked coldly. "Or has she forgotten what kind of occasion this is? Or perhaps it is you, Leo, who no longer knows what propriety is." Though his voice was calm, the weight behind his words was unmistakable. The event coordinator quickly understood and rushed to cut the performance short, ushering a mortified Sophie off the stage. She glanced at me, sitting beside the old man, and, convinced I had spoken against her, shot me a venomous look before turning to Leo, pretending to be hurt and delicate. Leo couldn't defy his grandfather. He reluctantly led her down, comforted her a little, and then brought her back for a formal introduction. Meanwhile, Julian and I kept Master Donovan company throughout the celebration. The old man was in high spirits, laughing heartily at our banter. He looked at Julian with fondness and nodded. "If this rascal ever dares to mistreat you, Clara, I will personally back you up," he said. I smiled and replied, "That won't happen. Julian and I get along just fine, in business and in life." The old master gazed at Julian as if seeing his long-lost daughter in his face, the one he had never stopped missing. Then it was Leo's turn. He approached with Sophie by his side, but before he could speak, the old man stood up abruptly. "I'm tired," he said. "Let the guests continue. Julian, help your grandfather see to everyone. I'm going to rest for a bit." Just as he was about to leave, he paused and turned back to Leo. "I heard Miss Sophie's health is fragile. You often have to shuttle between work and home. Since that's the case, take some time off and look after her properly." Leo froze, his expression shifting instantly. Sophie looked mortified, clinging to his sleeve in an awkward silence. He had always thought of himself as the favored heir. He had planned to win the old man over with the idea of a great-grandchild and claim the position of chairman once and for all. But the old master's words were firm. By asking Julian to take over the hosting duties, he had silently declared to everyone present who the next head of the Donovan family would be. Leo looked at Julian, then at me, and in his eyes I saw it, that flicker of hatred slowly rising. I looked back at him with a defiant gaze, as if to say, "I told you before. It was me who chose you. And now, you're the one on the outside." Leo had always believed that the Donovan family had grown powerful enough to no longer depend on my Sterling family. What he never realized was that, years ago, my grandfather had agreed to support the Donovan family under one condition, that whoever I, Clara Sterling, chose as my partner would be their rightful successor. This morning, my grandfather had personally contacted Mr. Donovan, reminding him not to forget that promise. Although old Mr. Donovan no longer held a formal position in the company, he was still clearly aware of everything that was happening behind the scenes, and I was sure he would weigh his options carefully for the long-term stability of the family business. Leo was soon dismissed from his position at the group's headquarters. The old master claimed he had acted recklessly and needed to gain more experience elsewhere before returning. In his absence, Julian stepped in to take over his role and wasted no time in asserting his control, quickly dismantling Leo's network of influence, one by one. Scandals tied to the projects Leo had managed began to surface. Even the car crash that had claimed the lives of Julian's parents years ago was brought back into the spotlight. Back then, the youngest daughter of the Donovan family, Julian's mother, had been a rising star in the business world, once viewed as the likely successor. But tragedy struck when both she and her husband were killed in an accident, leaving behind a very young Julian. Whispers had always circulated, rumors that the crash had not been an accident at all. Many suspected Leo's parents were involved. After all, their own talents were mediocre at best, and without eliminating the sister, they would have remained forever in her shadow. Even my grandfather had suspected something back then. He said very little, but his cold treatment of the Donovans' eldest son spoke volumes. I found myself growing worried. One evening at dinner, I cautioned Julian, telling him not to act impulsively. "People like Leo's family," I said, "are scarier than ghosts." Julian just smiled. "Are you worried about me?" Even at a time like that, he had the nerve to joke. I glared at him, pretending to be angry. He only chuckled, his laughter soft and warm. I'm really glad you care. Just then, the restaurant's violinist began to play a soft melody. Julian stood up and offered his hand to me. Miss Sterling, may I have this dance? There was a playful glint in his eyes, his posture courteous and refined. It reminded me of a moment years ago during a charity gala. Back then, Leo had insisted on dancing with Sophie just to provoke me, humiliating me in front of the entire crowd. That night, it was Julian who had stepped forward to save me. Dressed in a tailcoat, tall and composed, he had extended his hand with a faint, confident smile and effortlessly stolen the spotlight from Sophie. In his arms, I had felt seen. He helped me relax, guiding me through the dance until I was smiling without even realizing it. That was the first time I had truly let go. The first time I felt light, like I belonged in someone's arms. Midway through the dance, he had leaned in and whispered, "Was it worth it?" I had rolled my eyes. "None of your business." After that, he never interfered again, only watched quietly from the sidelines as I stumbled through years of entanglement with Leo, always with that same half smile. Now, dancing again in his embrace, he leaned in until our noses nearly touched. "Could it be," he teased, "that I liked you even back then?" Then he paused. "No, it was even earlier. Do you remember the first time we met?" My thoughts drifted back to childhood. He had just returned to the Donovan family estate after his parents' death, and the neighborhood kids mocked him for being an orphan. I knew that feeling. I had grown up without parents, too. I stepped in to defend him, chasing the bullies away. For that, I was scolded by my grandfather and even got my wrist slapped. My eyes widened at the memory. Could this be that so-called suspension bridge effect? But really, how old were we back then? The music faded. In the stillness, he leaned in and kissed me gently. "Miss Sterling," he whispered, "you really do take your time turning around." But I waited, and it was worth it. Later that week, while I was working, a sudden, sharp uneasiness swept over me. My phone rang. When I answered, a frantic voice told me that Julian had been in a car accident and was now in the hospital. I felt the world tilt under my feet. My first thought was, is history repeating itself? I knew what Leo was capable of. He was petty, dangerous, and ruthless. Without a second thought, I grabbed my keys and rushed out of the office. When I arrived at the hospital, a vehicle covered in a white sheet was being towed away. I saw police officers speaking with doctors. My heart dropped. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I lunged toward a stretcher being wheeled by, my mind racing with every memory I had of Julian, the time he stepped in to protect me, the way he made me laugh, the warmth of his embrace, the stubborn gentleness he always showed me. I don't know how long I stood there, crying uncontrollably, completely lost in my grief until I felt someone gently tap my shoulder. I turned, my face covered in tears, and there he was, alive, with only a small scrape on his forehead. Hands in his pockets, he looked at me with that familiar smirk. "Who are you crying for?" he asked. "If it's for your ex, I might get jealous." That teasing tone again. I ran into his arms and he held me close. He was safe. Thank God he was safe. He told me he had managed to avoid the worst of the crash, thanks to his exceptional driving skills, but the attempted murder was no accident. It had been planned, and now there was proof that his uncle's family had hired someone to kill him. Julian had already captured the man responsible and turned him over to the police. Over the past few weeks, Julian had been steadily cornering Leo's faction, forcing them to act out of desperation. And, as expected, they had cracked. Afraid their role in the deaths of Julian's parents would be exposed, they made their move and, in doing so, revealed everything. They had pulled the same old trick again, staging yet another car accident. This time, both Leo and his father were taken in for questioning. At first, they denied everything, but when the evidence piled up, they finally lowered their heads and confessed. Sophie, seeing that Leo was in serious trouble, abandoned the child she claimed to be carrying and tried to flee the country. However, the police caught her at the airport. She was reported for fraud, and it turned out that all the money she had been secretly hoarding was meant for her escape. When questioned, she coldly admitted that she had never truly loved any man, she only ever loved money. After crying my heart out, something suddenly clicked in my mind. I turned to Julian, my eyes stinging with tears. You promised me all those things before. It was just part of your plan, wasn't it? You used me on purpose. Julian gently wiped my tears away, his expression soft but firm. No, he said quietly. Returning to the Donovan family was a plan I made a long time ago. I have spent 5 years preparing to take control. Didn't you realize? Most of the key people in the Donovan family already follow my lead. Even if you had chosen Leo, I still had a way to bring him down. I remembered how those people always seemed to follow Julian's direction, even when he seemed to be doing nothing. His voice was now gentle, like he was handling something fragile. He continued, my original plan was to wait until I had secured my position and then take you back from his side. But it seems fate helped me out. It brought you back to me sooner. After saying that, he pulled me into his arms with a quiet possessiveness and pressed a soft kiss to my forehead. That night, after I had finished showering and was lying in bed, Julian leaned against the doorway, his chin tilted up in mock arrogance. Miss Sterling? He asked teasingly. Did you come to the wrong room? I glared at him, both embarrassed and annoyed. I pulled the blanket aside and was about to get out of bed when he crossed the room in a few quick strides and grabbed my hand firmly. He leaned in close, his breath warm and faintly scented with mint. Then he closed his eyes and kissed me. His voice was low and tender. When it comes to things like this, I should be the one to take the lead. Clara, I will make you happy. I wrapped my arms around his neck in return and kissed him back, showing him with my actions that I was willing, that I had chosen him. The warmth of his hand against my skin sent a wave of emotion through me, and my heart beat stronger than it ever had before. I am happy, I whispered, truly happy.